Good morning, everybody. I don't believe we had any data this morning. Let me see here. No, we had no data before the bell. We do have a bond auction at 1 o'clock, and that's pretty much it for the calendar today. Pretty quiet day as far as data goes. Let's take a look at our trade plan from last night. Do we need to update anything? Okay, so last night we said holding above 350. We're looking for 380 and 87. That is still good. Holding below 317, we're looking for 287 and 250. That is the value of Friday. That is also still good. So we're going to keep that the same. Yesterday we had a lowercase b, kind of a bearish imbalance. And today we are still ranging inside that same value. So kind of confirming that value, which is honestly back from Monday as well. So pretty much all the value this week is the same range. Around the 20s to the 50s, kind of in like a 30-point range right now. We just failed that range high, and we're slowly rotating back down, possibly to 20, maybe 17 for that composite range low. So looking for around 20, and like I said, that will finish the retrace of that multi-day balance. We have more of a D-shaped profile today, just kind of balancing out. Not really a lowercase b like we saw yesterday. So a bit more of a multi-day balance here. Okay, is it the same on NASDAQ? Let me see here. So NASDAQ holding above 112. We're looking for 321 and 440. Holding below 112, we're looking for 035 and 825. That is still good. Still in that multi-day range, same as ES. So we are kind of rotating today. We could begin to rotate the overlapping values, so keep an eye on that. That would be basically from 112 to about that 321 target. Also around like 280-ish. A lot of value around there as well. Yeah, just stuck in a multi-day balance right now. Slightly bearish because of yesterday. Yesterday has that lowercase b. If they keep protecting that value high, it is slightly bearish. But overall, just kind of stuck in a 3-day balance here. You can see that this high right here is kind of failing to rotate, so that's what I mean by slightly bearish. You're not really making it to that range high. So I'm going to change our above level to like 200. Yeah, we're going to say like 205. Everything else should be good. All right, that is the trade plan for today. Let's take a look at the trails here. So we're failing a green trail right now. It hasn't flipped red just yet. Let's actually set an alert on that. Okay, that should be good. So that'll send us an alert when that turns red, or at least when the candle closes. 15-minute red trail, failing the red trail right now. Had a little bit of a bull div on the low there, hitting your trail target. 5-minute pretty red trail, kind of a bulldog, but it would have to bounce immediately right out of the open. And 1-minute red trail as well. So pretty much every single trail is red, and we're back testing them a little bearishly here. So still in that downward rotation. Let's take a look at NASDAQ. Let's set an alert on NASDAQ as well. So still holding a green trail on NASDAQ, so keep an eye on that, flipping red. 15 trying to hold the trail as well, so is the 5, so a little bit different on NASDAQ. NASDAQ is slightly bullish, trying to hold on to those green trails, while NASDAQ, or sorry, ES, is continuously failing red trails. So we need to figure out if it's still rotating on the open, or if we're going to start losing the balance here. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Backpack and Shima, Itachi, Leo, Morris, Banana, Seth, Trevor, Scott, Techie, Patriot, Larry, Scott, DS, Future, Volume, Burza, Bobby, Keegan, Fernando, Marcel, C-Mac, Unleashed, Let's Do This, Gregor, Lulu, Tamer, AT, Liquidated. Good morning, Blood. Good morning, Dab, 2013, Chuck, and eBay. Appreciate you guys being here. All right, here is the open. Let's see what it wants to do here. Wait a second. Oh, the trail was already red. It was right there at the top. I must not have seen it. Not sure how I missed that. Did that trigger our alert? Didn't trigger. Okay, so it was already red. I must have missed that dot. It must have changed like right at the last second. So flipping red right into that 30-minute close. Dad, that's not the Momo. It's a completely different indicator. You have to check your indicators. Should be the OTS. Estevan, Ordinary. Good morning, guys. Appreciate you being here. Okay, we're seeing an opening fade. We keep seeing these where the pressure on the open is just being flipped immediately. Very strong flip in opening pressure here on NASDAQ. Trying to rotate higher. Keep an eye on that 205, which already actually got hit right there. So 205 is being tested. So that's about where it would stall out if it wants to keep rotating downward. If it doesn't stall there, it's looking for like 300. 280 to 300. Good morning, Lubomir. Appreciate you guys all being here. So we don't have any morning data today, so it should be fairly quiet unless we have some headlines coming out. These dots are VWAP. That's the session VWAP. Morning, Lukes. By the way, I caught up on all my emails for the access and for the raffles and all that stuff, so I believe the people who won the raffle, you guys already responded. Let me double check. Yeah, so you guys are good. And then I believe everybody who asked me for access for the indicators with our Apex partnership, I think I caught all those emails as well. If I missed your email at this point, just go ahead and resend it. I probably just lost it. I'm definitely not muted. All right, keep an eye on 205. If we hold above that on NASDAQ, it's looking for around 280 to 300 to finish up that multi-day rotation. Right now, we're kind of trading on the node of yesterday, possibly moving back to the node of Monday. Let's take a look at our multi-day trade plan that we had for our swing traders. So we talked about this yesterday. You can see all of our VWAPs kind of converged in the middle here. And that's where we were trading yesterday. We kept ping-ponging back and forth between those VWAPs. So that those targets were all hit. So you didn't get the point of origin targets, but you did get all the VWAP targets. You did get the point of origin target on NASDAQ. So that target got hit there. And then you had all the VWAPs get hit here. Didn't obviously get the major target on the low there. You'd have to check, Dab. Check in your invite-only scripts. It should be in there. If it's not, you can send me a message. Hey, Unleashed, no worries, man. Sorry about the wait, obviously. Some of you guys messaged me like a week or two ago. Been a little behind on emails. Okay, so like I said, if it wants to continue to rotate, you're going to lose 205. You stay above 205, you're rotating the multi-day balance. You're pushing to the upside. So back below 205, we are rotating today's value, which I think it just finished already. Let me double check. No, it's looking for around 140. Good morning, Optimus. Yeah, Tom, I keep an eye on it. I just don't usually mark the level out as much because the POC is not exactly like a set in stone level. It's more of like a zone. So like if I were to mark out this POC, it would kind of be pointless to mark out this level here because the POC node is this giant node. So you're paying attention to it, you just don't mark it out like a single level as much. Like I could mark out this level at 28, or I could just say keep an eye on it around 28, right? It's just too big of a level sometimes. It's just not visually appealing to mark them all out on your chart. Okay, so we're finishing up the lower rotations here. Here is the VWAP on NASDAQ. VWAP's above us on ES. A little bit of a difference here on VWAPs because you have kind of a bear flag in the VWAP on ES. But NASDAQ is actually using VWAP as support. So a bit of a discrepancy here. Gonna mark out all the important overnight levels here. Alright, that should be good. Here's the 140 level being front run a little bit on NQ. When trading crypto, it's kind of different because you have to break it up into multiple sessions because it's 24 hours. So I would recommend having multiple profiles. So have a profile for like the New York session, have a profile for the London session, so on and so forth. Or you could just use one giant profile, but having one big profile for the whole day, that's going to be, it's not going to be too helpful for like scalping. That'd be more of like a swing trading thing. If you're trying to day trade more, I would break it up into multiple profiles, probably like 3 or 4 profiles. New York, London, Asian. Good morning, Metis. The 6-hour profile, yeah, it just breaks it up into four clean candles, right? Or four clean profiles. Unfortunately, the market's not that clean. So if you're doing 6-hour candles, 6-hour profiles, it's not really how the market works. Like the exact sessions are not going to be correct. Dab, I'm not answering your question because it's very self-explanatory. What is the indicator called, Dab? I mean, you've seen this stream for weeks, possibly months. What's the name of the indicator? If you found the Momo, it's literally right next to it. So I don't know how you could find one and not the other. They should all come up in your invite-only scripts, and then you just click through them, right? And I already double-checked on my end. You do have access. So it's not an issue with the access. Good morning, Sam. Good morning, Roman. Good morning, Metis. Appreciate you guys being here. The market's moving very fast today, guys. I can't keep up with this analysis-wise. Basically, right now, you are just keeping an eye on the rotations. Follow the trade plan that I posted. It should be pinned. Yeah, it's still pinned in chat. We're still looking for rotations, possibly. Let me show you here. From 28 to 42 is the full session right now on ES. The NASDAQ one is 148 to 220, 217. So we're just rotating right now. The biggest thing you got to watch for today is, are we rotating just today's profile, or are we doing the multi-day profile, right? The multi-day profile is a bit wider. So it's around 320 to 350 on ES. And the multi-day profile on NASDAQ is 130 to 280. So right now we're rotating the current profiles, not the multi-day. But if we start breaking above and holding above the value highs, or the value lows, right? We start expanding that profile. We might be looking for the larger one. This is ATAS, G. ATAS. Is there a US version of ATAS? I would hope so. I'm in the US. Good morning, Chuck. Good morning, Crypto. Good morning, Trent. Good morning, TK. Appreciate you guys being here. Okay, start paying attention on NASDAQ and ES here. We finished the upper rotation. Are we going for that wider rotation? Yeah, the beta for the Mac version on Addis is starting now, so hopefully they'll have that Mac version by the end of the year. Check your emails if you guys are using Addis and you want to try them out on Mac. They sent out a couple of emails for the beta test. I'm not using Mac, so I can't beta test them. I mean, if they can fully replicate how it runs on Windows on Mac, that's going to be fantastic because there's not many platforms that run this smooth on Mac. I'm not a Mac user, like I said, so I just have to go off of what you guys have told me. Okay, back to rotation of the current profile, so we're not going for that larger profile. These are very fast rotations, so be very careful. We are just looking to be a seller around the value high and a buyer around the value low until these rotations are completed. Russell and Dow very weak, possibly pulling ES down. That's why we're getting a bit of a discrepancy between ES and NASDAQ. Yeah, gee, their pricing's in euros, but that doesn't mean you can't use it in the US. It just converts your payment. What is the euro right now? Is it like 10% higher? About 16% higher? Yeah, dollar's about 85% of a euro. Yeah, Mac is definitely not great for traders. Unless you're doing like very simple stuff like Trade-of-8. Windows is definitely the better platform for most trading. This is pretty crazy price action here. We are moving around very quickly, and it's doing this with decent liquidity. It's not very high. It's not as high as it was. But it's not like it's doing this with a bunch of level 2 orders. Yeah, it's what you guys have told me is Motive Wave is the better one for Mac. I've never tried them. Yeah, TradingView runs well on Mac. TradingView runs on anything. TradingView is a good platform. All right, the upper rotation is finished again. We'll see if that sell pressure comes in, slaps it back down to the 30s, possibly like 30, 32. The very volatile rotation that we're currently seeing. Yeah, it seems like TradingView is preparing to provide better data. They're like setting themselves up with all the footprint stuff and everything. So hopefully in the next year or so. TradingView doesn't have like, they don't have charts like this that actually work. They don't have good tapes. They don't have good DOMs. So that's where they struggle. I'd be very careful trading today, guys. This is insane price action. Indexes are moving around like they're penny stocks. There's like nothing pushing us around either. This is just pretty normal trading. There's not headlines, there's not data coming out. It's a bit unusual. Yeah, be careful with your sizing today for sure. The volatility is pretty crazy. We're moving 10 points like every 3 to 5 minutes. Trump tweet? Is Trump tweeting? Let me see. Yeah, he's talking about the tariffs on India. Yeah, Metis, I look at the 10-year yield, the 30-year yield, the bond market. I just don't look at them that much anymore because the correlations are non-existent. There is no correlation trading right now. The correlation trading is just so weak. The markets are kind of doing what they want, and they don't really give a shit about correlations right now, unfortunately. Yeah, we have oil at 1030, but like I said, correlations are pretty dead, so I don't know how much that will impact the markets here. Yeah, Metis, I would keep an eye on the Japanese yen carry trade. That has a big impact on the bond market, the yield market. And our current yield spread between the 10-year US and 10-year Japan is getting pretty low. And the lower that gets, the more the carry trade wants to come off. And it's currently at 2.7. The yen trade will probably start coming off maybe at like 2.5 or below. Maybe 2.6 if it's very aggressive. Funny enough, that last scare that we had, the yen carry trade being pulled off, I think that was in August as well. It was in August, yep. It was exactly a year ago, actually, funny enough. August of 24, when we had that nasty drop. It went from 5,700 to 5,100. That was the yen trade being pulled back. So exactly a year ago. If you want to see what the market does when the yen trade randomly starts collapsing, just look at a year ago on ES. Now that was pretty scary because that was a kind of a black swan event. That was something that was not predicted. It just kind of happened. I believe Japan raised their rates randomly. It was like an emergency raise or something like that. Basically, long story short, I'm not a macro guy, so I'm not going to get too deep into it. But the very basics of the carry trade is because the rates are so low in Japan, they're borrowing a bunch of yen and then converting it into dollars and then investing, right? So if the rates go up in Japan, they have to pay back more money. Basically, therefore it hurts it hurts the carry trade. So if our rates get lower or the Japanese rates go up, the spread tightens. And if the spread tightens, it hurts the carry trade. They have to let go of their US assets to pay back their yen. And then, like I said, look at what happened a year ago. It's usually a big problem if it happens randomly. Right now it's happening kind of slowly, so it shouldn't be too bad if the carry trade starts to fall off. That one was a surprise. Yeah, or if the yen gets a lot stronger compared to the dollar, yep. So you're watching the yield spread or you're watching the actual spread, the forex spread, the forex pair. For the carry trade to remain strong, the dollar needs to remain strong against the yen, which it currently is. You have like a weekly double bottom, possibly like a weekly bulldog. But if you start losing like 140, 125 on the pair, then that looks pretty bad. Okay, finishing the upper rotation again. You kind of failed to rotate here. You didn't really finish the lower rotation. So possibly a little bit bullish. We are failing to rotate into that value low. If they can hold above the value highs here, they're looking for the rotation of the multi-day range, not just today's range. Yeah, the biggest reason people are watching it right now is there's a big change in the Japanese government going on right now that hasn't happened in a long time. Their party that's been in control for a very long time is slowly losing control. So this is that multi-day range currently being tested. Very nasty price action. We swept the low, swept the high, and now we're going back above the high of the range here. So double sweep, grabbing liquidity, possibly going for a big move if they can stay above like 42 to 40 even. Yeah, we had a couple problems yesterday that they're trying to repair. Untested high, and then we have this single prints. I believe we had an afternoon break as well. No, we did not actually. That was the first day in a while we did not have an afternoon break. A little bit off the ADMA here, a little bit extended. If it pulls back and rebounds into that 43, they need to hold above that range high if they want to keep breaking balance here. No, you can't possibly have single prints until the C session opens. A lot of blue candles since the open. The teal candles are when you break the high and you break the low of the prior candle. That's how volatile we've been since the open here. That's pretty nasty. A pretty big 30-minute candle, wiping out damn near this entire pre-market range. Very top-heavy node here. They need to hold on to like 48 or these traders will be stuck. Yeah, they could be engulfing candles. They're not exactly engulfing candles. Because they could be like wicks or big dojis or something like that. It doesn't really tell you whether or not it's engulfing entirely. It's a pretty nasty note if they can't hold on to this. A little bit of absorption on the high here. It's all personal preference, Bobby. I've tried pretty much every form of charting you can think of. I always come back to candlesticks. I think they're just the overall best. Gives you all the information you need. That top node is being absorbed. If they can't hold on to this pullback into 42, possibly like 40 at the lowest, looking pretty bad, possibly sweeping this entire range. So far, every attempt to break balance has failed. This has been the largest break of balance. We'll see if it can hold on to the EMAs here. 24 EMA trails being retested. Looks like yet another failure of the break of balance, turning into a range sweep again. When your price action is this choppy, you need to just like zoom out and take a look and see like what are we doing, right? Like why are we chopping here? And today it's just because we're rotating that overlapping value. We're just back and forth. It's basically like Monday was the true value, and every attempt to leave that value is not working. So we're just kind of ranging inside of Monday's value. Tried to break, failed. Tried to break, failed. There's yesterday's value high at 46, so failing that. Because we hit yesterday's value high, we could break today's value low and go to yesterday's value low. That'd be 317. So keep an eye on that. Yeah, Sam, I already pulled it. The winners have already responded to me as well. I am fully caught up on emails, so if you guys, if you were asking for like ADIS trials or indicator access, stuff like that, if I haven't responded to you, I probably didn't see your email, so go ahead and resend it. I don't respond to the raffle emails, I just get you guys added to the raffle, and that's it. But the indicator access, the trials, or like any just normal questions or whatnot, you guys should see a response. So if you don't see one, go ahead and resend it. Good morning, it's you. So watch these range lows here, 32 to like 27. Losing VWAPs on ES. Keep an eye on VWAP on NASDAQ 181. Losing all the trails as well. 30-minute trail still holding us down at 44. Not even OPEX this week, I don't believe. No, it's not. It's kind of crazy how we're moving like this today. Pretty high volatility for nothing going on. Yeah, Rocket, it's like a micro pullback into a micro pullback, unfortunately. You had a strong move up, micro pullback for the pre-market, trend down, and now we have another micro pullback here. Still failing that 30-minute trail. Not trending or anything, but we did flip it red. Good morning, Tom. Okay, we swept the range high here. They have been sweeping both sides, so let's see. They should be able to break down here. They're breaking the range low. We'll see if it turns into a sweep. So that's what I was talking about earlier with that top-heavy node. When you put in a node like that on the high of the candle, you really need to protect that. Because as soon as you lose that node, it gets pretty dangerous like this. They kind of squeeze them out. All right, here's the breakdown. Let's see if it turns into a sweep. They've been sweeping these levels quite often. There's a lot of delta here. A lot of bearish delta coming in. So this might be the move that we were talking about earlier about the... So we hit the value high of yesterday. We finished that rotation. So if they ignore the value low of today, they might be looking for the value low of yesterday. So we might be rotating yesterday, not exactly today. So watch this value low here. Exactly where we are, 329. Possibly going down to 17. The delta's not on one level. There's just a lot of delta coming in on the way down. You can see the delta trend here. The delta's just nuking. So possibly looking for 17 here, which is where a lot of our zones are overlapping anyway. The number in red was like a million numbers in red on my chart, so I'm not sure what you're talking about. But yes, typically the red is bearish delta. These are cumulative deltas, the ones on the 1 minute chart. And then the red bars are also volume bars that are indicating whether the bar is bearish delta or bullish delta. But the bar itself is volume. So it's a volume profile on the right and then a delta ladder on the left. Yeah, below the bar is volume and then delta. The blue is the volume, the red or green is the delta. The bars in the middle are just a combination of delta and volume, basically. Good morning, Michael. I think Thinkorswim has delta indicators, but from what I've heard, they're not very good. They're not really a futures platform, so any of their like order flow stuff is probably terrible. So we're sitting right on the value low of today. It's trying to decide, is this a rotation of today or a rotation of yesterday? Because if it stays here, it's just rotating today. But if it breaks here, it's going down to, what did we say, 17? It's not exactly a coin flip because it's a very good rotation. So you have a slight bias if you're buying the value low. You have a slight bias if you're selling the value high. If you're trading outside of that, then yes, it's a coin flip. Seeing another strong node here. This is a buyer node on the low, so not as bad as a seller node being trapped. The difference in this node is it's being supported, right? It's going with the price. So the buyers came in protecting it as a support, and then it bounced off of that node. So this node here, it was going with the price on the way up, but then as soon as it was lost, they weren't protecting it. So they became trapped. Today's a good example of if you wanted to trade the rotations, you really had to kind of just trust it. You didn't really have a lot of time to like predict and sit there and wait for confirmation. You really just had to trust the value high and value low levels. So here's a rebound here, rebounding into the range low and then selling it. If they lose this lower node here, possibly going for 17, they're still protecting it for now. It's not the end of the move just yet. But yeah, that bearish rebound not looking too good for the buyers. It's a very small failure to rotate. So right there, you saw a problem with the initiative buyers, not the responsive buyers. The initiative buyers that should have been breaking through that level and rotating upward, they were very weak, so it came back down. But then look at how strong the responsive buyers are. The buyers buying the pullback on that node, they're doing a fantastic job holding that node. There's always two sides, right? There's always the aggressive side and more of the passive side. And the aggressive side of buyers there were pretty weak. But the passive side of buyers were very strong. You said from 10:04 to 10:12. 10:04 to 10:12. This high here, not really. I see what you're looking at to call it a rollover top, like you're calling that like a lower high there, but not really. That's all kind of one cluster. On a rollover top, you want three very distinctive clusters. That's all kind of one cluster together. That is a rollover in like momentum, not in not like a rollover top setup wise. You're kind of just losing momentum there. But yeah, rollover top, you got to think about it like 3 points, like 1, 2, 3, ABC, whatever you want to call it. It has three very distinctive points. This only has like 1 point. OPEX this month. Yeah, it shouldn't be that strong. The OPEX in September is usually ridiculous because September is the month that everything lines up. That's why September is always pretty rough to trade. If you can think of it, it lines up in September. Pretty much every single major event. Historically, August is actually pretty bearish, I think, as well. I think the first half of August is historically bearish. The second half starts to recover. Look at the responsive buyers here. Same exact thing. You just had a rebound trade. The exact same rebound trade back to back, where it hit that level, failed downward, and then bounced off the that cluster right there. They just gave you the same trade 2 times in a row. No, I don't care too much about initial balance, like all the intricate things that go with it. Funny enough, I've been using it more so recently for that pattern that I talked about in that video last week. When one side of the balance is broken and the other side typically isn't. I've also been using the extensions more recently. But that's like the only extent I care about, initial balance. You took it the second time? Yeah, it's not a bad trade. It gave you a nice little scalp there. What's the range low? The range low is like 32-ish. And then the node is like 28. Yeah, it's not bad. It's like a 4-point scalp. Stuck between the VWAPs here on NQ. Here comes VWAP on ES. Okay, so rotation goes back to like 40 to 43. If they front run it and put in a lower high, probably around like 40. If they go to the actual level, probably like 44, 45. Well, it depends on what you mean by stats. Like, I don't use stats of anything, really. I use levels, but I don't use like the I forget what they're called. They're like internals almost. I don't use stuff like that. Here comes that range high. So here's that rotation, 40 to 44. That's that responsive buy pressure. Just beautiful, beautiful response on that node there. They protected that node like 2 or 3 times. Instantly going into a rotation. There's the rotation being finished. Possibly 46. So we are still rotating today. It is not rotating yesterday. They would have failed 27 and went down to 17, which they did not. So still respecting today's profile. Have a good day, Scott. Yeah, I know what they're talking about over. That's been around for a long time. Like if an overnight level breaks, the odds of it going to the other side and yada yada yada. I don't really use stuff like that. I talk about the overnight high and low sweep in my playbook series. That's a very good trade. Sweeping the overnight levels, using the overnight levels in your trading. All right, rotation has been completed. We'll see where it goes. As long as it stays below like 47 to 48, putting in a lower high, it will still look for that rotation to the downside. This is pretty good buy pressure, but we have had really good buy pressure the last attempt, and it still failed. No, I don't believe we've hit the single prints. I think it has to go a little bit higher. It has to go to 55. This is following our trade plan like to a T. I was talking about the rotation trades. Look for rotations. The multi-day balance. You have that D shape. Volume profile. Yeah, Dalton talks about that in his book when you have these like rotational days, that they're kind of counterintuitive because the the strength of the move is so strong going into like a value high or a value low, and you really think that that's going to keep trending that way, but then it fails the level and goes back into a rotation, so you're always like worried to trade it. D-shaped days are very they're very dependent on your discipline, like discipline to respect the value levels. They become easier to trade the more you respect volume profile and the more you trust the value levels. 91% probability of rate cut. Yeah, the job numbers being revised completely changed everybody's tune on the rate cuts. The rate cuts are pretty much guaranteed in September now. That's the dual mandate, right? Not just the inflation. They're also looking at the job market. Like I said, they just need to completely change how they find those job numbers. That data point is so bad, it's ridiculous. The fact they put so much weighting into that number, and it's probably one of the worst numbers that we get. It's insane. I think it's by far the most revised number of like any of the economic data points. Yeah, the problem with the whole tariff thing is like they kept talking about how they had to wait and see on how the tariffs impacted all these data points, right? And then we had the tariffs being postponed. They're like, okay, now we have to wait even longer. So now the tariffs are actually starting to take effect. So now we should see, well, they should see the impacts on whether it's good or bad, right? In the next few months or so, probably the next like quarter. So hopefully by the end of the year, they can't keep using that as an excuse, because that has been an excuse for them the entire year. Is, oh, we're waiting and we're waiting to see how the tariffs impact these data points. They've been saying that nonstop for 8 months now. But they won't have that as a crutch in the next like what 3 or 4 months. Yeah, that's what I was saying, Rocket. I was saying, like, could you imagine going to your boss with data like that and then going back to your boss like a week later and be like, oh, my bad. Here's some revisions on that. And it's like a completely different data set, not even remotely close. The data point is terrible. It's by far probably the worst data point that we get over the last couple of years. It's either that or the University of Michigan data. That data is ridiculous. Those two data points need to be completely reworked. Yeah, excuse is probably not the right word. It's definitely they are not wrong when they say they should wait for the tariff data. But I'm saying they're using that as their reasoning. That's like their number one reasoning for the entire year, right? So once that's out of the way, they can't say that anymore. They're going to have to rely on other things, is what I'm saying. Their answer to every single question can't be we're waiting on the tariffs, is my point. Okay, this is about where it should stall if it's staying in rotation because it's putting in a lower high. When you're rotating, you don't want to see higher highs or lower lows. Like right here, you had a lower low, but it swept it instantly. If you think about a bell curve, they should be putting in lower highs and lower lows the entire time. Or sorry, lower highs and higher lows. Yes, as long as you have a lower high here, it will rotate downward. That's what it's trying to do. You have to watch these EMAs. If you keep trending, that is a break of balance. You should not be trending. It needs to fail this ADMA pretty quickly. You're trying to on NASDAQ. Yeah, see, this is a problem with the rotation holding on to that ADMA on ES. That needs to break. Yeah, it does need one more push up to repair the single prints, which is probably what most of the buyers are using as their reasoning. The buyers are trying to fight this. They're trying to stop it from rotating back downward. You can see they're building up a node here. They're currently not protecting that node. I think the value high is technically like 43. Yeah, 43. So watch this rebound here. If they hold above 43 here, they're still trying to break balance. It is nearly identical to what we saw on the low. You had a node come in, it hit the value low, rebounded downward, bounced off the node, did it again, and then you rotated. So now we have a node here. Here's the value high. We're rebounding into the value high, bouncing back into that node. So as long as they protect that node bearishly at 50, you're still looking to go downward. You just have a little bit of chop in between from 45 to 50. The buyers are coming in at 45, sellers are coming in at 50. But yeah, it is pretty much identical to what happened on the low. They're nearly shifting the POC to this node here, the 46 node. Yeah, it's already a rotation day. You've already rotated like 4 or 6 times. I've kind of lost count at this point. And like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's like 5 or 6. Yep. Okay, this is identical to what happened on the low. They rebounded. They hit the cluster again. The second time it pushed it back down. We'll see if that's the case here. They need to stay below 50. Going above 50 is looking for this single prints. Single prints into 55, I believe it was. They're not protecting that node, so possibly looking for the single prints here. That rebound into 43 to 45 being protected. It needs one more push and those single prints are completed. This is the first true break of balance the entire day. Yeah, Chuck, exactly. And that's why I don't answer questions like that. Because people like imply that they're asking a question, but they're not asking a question. They're just trying to get me to trade for them. Like a way that you can rephrase the question into a way that I could answer it is like, let's say there's a rollover top trade happening, right? And you're asking like, is this a rollover top because of XYZ? Because we put in a high and then we swept the high, then we put in a lower high. And I would say yes, and I would go over it and like explain how it's a rollover top. But then you have the other person in chat who's like, can I short this rollover top with my stop loss at 350 and my target at VWAP? And then it's like, they're just asking me to trade for them. They're just asking me to press the button, you know what I mean? It's all about phrasing. It's all about like how you phrase it. One way is me spoon feeding you, and one way is us just having a genuine conversation and me answering a question. We filled in the single print. Single print into 55 filled in like to the tick. Now here is where we find out, is it just a single print fill in and we're going to go right back down, or are they actually going to protect this bullishly? Watch these EMAs, watch the trail, and we'll see if they can actually continue this trend here. So out of how many rotations we had today? We had like 5 or 6 or 4 or 6, somewhere around there. This is the first one to fail. And this is why I constantly preach on these D-shaped days. If you are rotationally trading, or if you're trading the rotations, you cannot cherry pick them. If you cherry pick them, you're going to lose. You need to decide like right away, am I trading the rotations? Yes. Okay. That means I have to trust the value high. I have to trust the value low. I mean, obviously, you don't want to just blindly trade them. Like, you still want to look for bear divs or bull divs or sweeps, or like you still want to look for setups in those genuine or in those areas, right? Around the value high, around the value low. It doesn't mean just blindly trade them. But you don't want to say like, oh, this doesn't look good, I'm not going to trade it. This one doesn't look good, I'm not going to trade it. And then like this one, okay, I'll trade this one. Like, you want to be in the mindset that you want to trade most of them. It doesn't need to look absolutely perfect. As long as it looks good enough, you want to trade the rotations, right? If you decided that you're trading the rotations. I'm not telling you that you should trade all of them. Like, if you're bad at trading POC, if you're bad at trading these D-shaped days, don't trade them. But if you want to trade them, like I said, you can't be a cherry picker and like try to pick one trade. If you lost this rotation here, that's not a problem. There's not really anything you did wrong here. This is the first time all day that it is genuinely breaking rotation. You got caught in the one that did not work. Now, if you cherry picked this one, you did not trade the 4 or 5 rotations that did work, that's going to feel pretty bad. And that is my point. So in a break of balance, there's 2 things you're always looking for. Is it building value outside of the value area, and is that value being protected? So we built value originally when we tried to break balance. We built value at 50. It was not protected. We talked about that at the time. You can go back and watch the stream whenever that happened. I don't remember exactly what time it was. But it was not protected. It was trapped. So you had the first thing, you didn't have the second thing. Back into rotation. Same thing here. You built value. It was not protected bearishly, so it was not a break of balance. Return to balance. This time you protected value at around 43 to 45. Started to break balance. So now we're building value at 54. Now we need to see if it's going to protect this. We don't know yet. It still could be trapped here. Until you pulled back and rebounded off 43, you did not know this was a break of balance. It looked like a normal rotation. When it bounced off that 43, like 50, wherever that was the first sign that, okay, this might not be rotating. So since that happened, now you're just watching the EMAs, you're watching the trails. As long as they are protected, you're building up value nodes, you're protecting those value nodes, you're rinse and repeating, right? Build the node, push higher. Build the node, push higher. As long as that keeps happening, you are continuing to break balance here. Now, the biggest things you want to look for are like absorption. Are we building a node that's being absorbed? Are we losing multiple nodes? Stuff like that. Is it wise to trade one side of it and not the other? It's kind of cherry picking. I wouldn't say that's entirely cherry picking where you're just picking like one trade. But you're like on the line, right? You're on the line of picking your trades. I would say if there's a very clear bias, you can do that. So like, let's say it's a micro pullback day after a P-shaped profile where you're slightly bullish and you only want to take those bullish trades. You don't really like to take those bearish ones. That's probably okay. In today's case, where we are sitting inside of an overlapping range, I would not do that. Because today we're sitting inside of a multi-day balance. We don't really have a bias. Like, there's no bias here. You see this? Like, that's a pretty balanced profile. If you have a very clear bias, then you could probably do that, but I'd still be careful. Yeah, this is what I would call a pivot to pivot move on the OTS. If you look at the 5-minute OTS, you're bouncing off a blue pivot, looking for an orange pivot, and there it is. So pivot to pivot. You also bounced off this ridiculously long pivot back from Tuesday, damn near to the tick there. So really long orange pivot, looking for that, or sorry, blue pivot, looking for the orange pivot. And there you go. Still absorbing this upper node here, so not looking great. Keep an eye on those trails in 24s. Yeah, you can do that. You can look for a slight bias depending on where the POC is, but I typically don't recommend it. I don't even think Dalton teaches that anymore. That's basically TPO counting. You're pretty much counting TPOs above or below and seeing which side is biased. What I would do instead of that, if you really want to like pick a bias, is see which side is breaking balance like more aggressively, like which side is creating value outside of the value area more aggressively. Like see where the sweeps are coming in, see where the nodes are trading outside of the value area, and that would give you a slight bias. But honestly, I wouldn't really pick a bias too much. If you're trading the rotations, you're trading the rotations. The more you try to pick a bias, the more it becomes cherry picking and you just hurt yourself. Today's not the best example of like blindly trading the rotations because the breaks of, or they're not technically breaks of balance, they attempted to break balance, obviously. They came back like immediately every time. But those breaks are pretty deep. Those are about, what, 4 to 5 point breaks? How wide was our value area? Is about 10. Yep. So about 10 points on the value rotation. So if you're looking at a 2 to 1, you have a 5-point stop. If you're looking at a 1 to 1, which most rotations you're typically around 1 to 1. I'd say like 1.25, 1.5 maybe. You're not going to get a 2 to 1 most of the time. 2 to 1's just a little too risky. On today, you did get a 2 to 1 because it was so volatile. So what I was saying was if you blindly followed the value area today and you used a proper stop, you would have been okay in most cases. Like even if you didn't think about, let me look for reversal patterns, if you were just blindly buying the value low and selling the value high, if you were using a 1 to 1, you were okay in most cases. I think the only case you would have been stopped out is probably this one here. But normally you don't want to do that. Normally you don't want to blindly follow it. You want to look for at least a little bit of a signal. Look for that sell pressure to come in. Look for the lower highs, or look for the delta nodes, or just something. Don't just put a limit trade out there and blindly follow it. So what I mean by like 1 to 1 is like if you look at the full session profile here, and we have like a 10-point range, I believe it is. It's a little over 10 points now because you made it wider. It's like 15 points. If you're trying to trade these rotations, you're typically looking for around a 1 to 1 or a 1.5. So if you're selling around the value high, your stop loss is, let's say, 10 points. You're looking for 10 points. Now, if you want to be a little bit better, you go for like a quarter, right? 1.25. So it'd be like risking 7 to make 10. You can't usually go for a 2 to 1 because the value area is typically not, it's not going to allow that. I'm pretty sure I talk about all this in my D-shaped video. If you watch my my video on trading balance profiles, I believe I talk about all this. I prefer to trade in balanced profiles. Balanced profiles are a bit of a pain in the ass, as you can see today. I believe imbalance profiles give you better levels. They give you better reversals. The D-shaped days, they're kind of hit or miss. I don't like, it's kind of counterintuitive, but I don't like the D-shaped days that are just blindly following the value high and value low. They're not really giving you the sweeps. I think the days that are giving you the sweeps are better, kind of like today, where you were like sweeping the value low, because I think those give you better, it gives you that time to like confirm the trade. But if you're just like hitting the value high and value low to the exact level and then just instantly reversing, it doesn't really give you that much time to think about getting in the trade. So I prefer those little sweeps where you break the value high or low by a couple of points and then you come back down. Okay, so our whole reason of going up was filling in the single prints. And they did just that. They filled them into the exact tick. And now you're seeing sell pressure. So this might have just been a single print fill in. And now they're going back into rotation. Keep an eye on these 24s and trails. If you start losing these, possibly going back to VWAP, possibly the value low. Typically, I say losing two major nodes is a failure and going back into balance, right? So major node we have around 49, major node we have around 45. You could say there's a node up here at around 54-ish. The double node technique would line up perfectly with the value high anyway. Losing the node here, losing the node here. This is the second node, and that's the value high. Value high is at like 43-ish. Beautiful bear div on the high of day as well. At least on momentum, not on delta. Trail's still holding here. They're buying the trail so far. They're not filled on NASDAQ. Yeah, I don't typically watch them on NASDAQ too much. Yeah, we might have one more move up to fill NASDAQ. Trails are still holding here. Possibly repairing the poor high here. Needs to push by like 2 points. That's also the overnight high, I believe. Yeah, overnight high around the London Open. Does Addis have an indicator for like the different opens? I don't know what it would be called. What, sessions maybe? Session color? No. So here's a good example on the EMAs by what you want to look for when you're breaking balance. So you tried to break balance here, retested the EMA, pretty much instantly lost it. So it wasn't indicating that it was respecting the trend. Same thing on the downside. You broke the value low. First retest of the ADMA after the break of the value low wasn't really respecting it. Chopped out a little bit, but then it broke back above it. And then we broke the value high up here. ADMA bounce. ADMA kind of a bounce. It broke a little bit. More of a cupping pattern. And then we hit the 24, respecting it. You see the difference there? That's what I always mean about watching the EMAs when you're breaking balance. Not respecting it, definitely respecting it. Poor high repaired. And EMA stuff like that is always easier to see in hindsight. EMAs are lagging, obviously. But that's just a good pattern to keep in mind when you have those rotations. The more you respect the EMAs when you're outside of the value area, the more that break of balance is being respected. A break of balance is clearly a trend move, right? They're looking for higher value. They're looking for lower value. When you're balancing, it's a ranging move. Now, it looks like a trend if the balance is very wide. If the balance is like, what, 20 points or something, then it's obviously going to be trending on like the 1 minute. But it's not going to be trending on the higher time frames. Okay, so now that we're in this like very obvious break of balance, at this point we can say it's definitely breaking balance. You're just keeping an eye on those trails, keep an eye on those 24s, watching those nodes, making sure we're not losing nodes. You don't want to see stuff like this, where you put in a top-heavy node and then lose it, because that turns into a trap. So if we have those top-heavy nodes, they need to keep protecting them. So we're back into that fib sell zone from the higher time frames, but we've kind of already used this. This trade plan's already done, really. So this was the trade plan for the swing traders yesterday, where you kind of had that rollover top, you had that bear flag, and they were looking for a pushback down. They did get a nice push into the VWAPs, but they couldn't break the VWAPs. So now that we're retesting this, it could go for the same trade twice, but it's not really the same trade because this is not really a bear flag. This is a bear flag. So this swing trade idea is pretty much done. So take one more look at it and I'll go ahead and delete this. You had that bear flag. You actually hit your point of origin target on NASDAQ. So VWAP targets and the point of origin was taken out. And that point of origin was actually a very good bottom. So I'll go ahead and delete all this. And we'll keep an eye on that point of origin that actually acted as a pretty good bottom there. And you know, we will actually keep an eye on that that 618 level as well. So a swing trading idea just based on price action would be we're still looking for that 618 pullback. And then if they start holding above those highs, holding above that 618, you're just turning into a full retrace back into those highs. That's kind of their idea right now. What's going on, Michael? Yeah, 10-year bond auction at 1 o'clock. Yep. Keep an eye on this 30-minute close. They're breaking the high of day into that 30-minute close. And also, this would be our pattern. So this would be the untested initial balance low. Most likely not going to be tested today. Our untested level yesterday was 72, so keep an eye on that. This is one of those violent moves where you sweep both sides. You sweep the high of the range, you sweep the low of the range, then you go into an impulse. It actually was a double sweep. You swept it, did it again, then you went for the impulse. Kind of crazy. This is one of the differences between market profile and volume profile, right? If we were just looking at the volume profile today, we could argue that it's like a lowercase b, right? And lowercase b's are typically kind of bearish leaning. But you need to understand where the open and close are, right? Because with the open in mind, this is not a lowercase b. It's just a D shape breaking out. Because we opened towards the low, now we're currently trading towards the high, right? A lowercase b is typically opening towards the high, excuse me, and closing towards the low, right? If you're only watching volume profile, you need to understand what's happening first, what's happening second. Here's a great example of what I talk about with the OTS. When you have a bull div or a bear div, the trail is always your target. You're not expecting it to turn into a bigger trade until that trail is taken out. So we had a very obvious bear div here. It hits the trail, but it does not go below the trail. And it turns into a trap. The bears are trapped. So you always start out, if you're trading a divergence, you always start out looking for the short-term target, and then you can turn that into a bigger trade. But if your short-term target it acts as a major resistance against your trade, then you probably want to close it, right? So always look for that like short-term moving average or the trail. Then if you start to break that, you can go into a much bigger trade. Because you don't know if the bull div or bear div is just looking for a relief. Maybe it's extended, it's just looking for a relief, right? Or is it actually calling the top or the bottom? If it just slices right through those averages, slices right through the trail, doesn't even act like it's there, then it's turning into a larger trade, right? Then you look for VWAP, then you look for other levels, right? But always have your main target as that short-term target. You look at it as a scalp. Everything else is a bonus. If you think about bull divs and bear divs like that, I promise you you'll probably do a lot better on your bull and bear div trading. You'll see it time and time again where you'll trade like 10 divs and maybe 7 of them are just small scalps. And then you have like 3 of them turn out to be massive trades. But everybody trades them thinking that 10 out of 10 are going to be massive trades, right? And you don't take profit on the small scalp, then it comes back and hurts you, and maybe you stop out break even, maybe you stop out for a full loss. It's just a pain in the ass, right? Okay, like I said earlier, when you're doing stuff like this, you don't have to think too much. Your brain is pretty much turned off. You're just watching the EMAs, you're watching the nodes. As long as it's following the trails, the EMAs, the nodes, not being absorbed, you're just going to keep doing this. Now, one thing to keep an eye on is in the next 2 minutes, you're probably going to create single prints going down to 57. Keep it on that 72. I'm going to get rid of this fib zone here. This is the old POC, so there's an old POC right here as well. And then we have that overnight high at 77. Here's our full retrace of yesterday into 321. And then look for that overnight high at 404. Okay, single prints down to 57, possibly 55, which, funny enough, what do we always say about single prints? They love creating new ones when they're filling in old ones. And the single prints are now pretty much the same exact level, funny enough. So when you're breaking balance, those two things you always remember, are you finding value or are you protecting value? And that's why we're looking at this profile over here. You look for these nodes. Are they still building nodes? And when they retest those nodes, are they protecting them? So they built a node at 61, very small node at 64. I wouldn't really call these two nodes, they're very weak. You want the nodes that they're building to be pretty much the same value as where the value levels are. So like where the value high is, you look at the value high and you look at the nodes that are near the value high and you see how much volume they have, you see how big they are. You want the nodes that they're building to be relatively the same size, if not larger, right? Because it means they're still finding value above the value area. When it starts to do stuff like this, where it's very low, very, very small nodes, they can retrace those very quickly. So those are a bit dangerous. So I'd say the last major node is the one at 61. These are very weak. You would need to build these up a little bit more. Yeah, I've thought about doing something like that where I go back and because I have all my live streams cataloged, right? Pretty much every single live stream I've ever done is still on YouTube. And I've thought about starting like after the day is over. I can retitle the stream based on like what it did. So like I could say it's a P-shaped profile or like a rotational day or something like that. But I don't know. I don't know how that would impact like the YouTube like algorithm or stats or whatever. Like it would make it harder to find my live streams is my point. Like if somebody was trying to find a live stream from a certain day, it'd be harder to find. Today would be a good day to recap. I unfortunately don't have time to do a recap today, but I might recap today tomorrow. It'll just be like a day late. You see the weakness here? You see how it's like kind of being pulled back into that 60 node? 61 node? It's because they're not really establishing a better node. They're trying to put in a node at 67 here. We'll keep an eye on that. But this is what I mean by when they put in these small nodes, they like to be pulled back to those larger nodes. They're kind of like magnets. It's okay if it does this, where it like chops side by side, because this is what it needs to do to build the node up. But it's not okay if it starts to like lose it and then retest it. So like if it comes down and then it retests it and then it sells it again, that's not good. You don't want to see that. But if it goes like this and it just kind of rotates, that's not bad. So that's something you'll get used to seeing. You'll just kind of learn the difference. I talk about that on the days that I do like the tape reading a lot. When you read, you kind of read where the orders are coming in, right? So like if we come down and we see like 66, 65, and then we come back up and it doesn't allow you to see like 68, that's a problem. But right now it's seeing 68, so it's not that big of a deal. As long as you're rotating back and forth. So like here's the strongest sell so far. That was the strongest reaction we had. So if this rebounds and they don't see 68, that's a problem. They're becoming trapped. If it even rebounds, that sell was pretty strong. Okay, you might not even get a rebound here. Turning into a sweep, trapping the node. And this is what I mean by the second thing we look for. We look for building value and protecting value, right? So they built the value with 67. Are the buyers protecting it? Very clearly, no. So then you go back to a prior node. Are they protecting that node? So now we have a node at 64, and then we have one at 61. The 61 was the original node. That's the one they're being pulled back into. The same thing on that node there, on the 64 node. It's hard to show you because the tape is moving too fast. I can't really read the tape when it's moving like this. I can't read it out loud. But you're not really, like when they lost that 64 node, they didn't allow it to trade back above it. So you see how it goes below 64 here, 64, 63.50, 60. You don't see 64 again. So once you lost that 64 node, you don't see it again. They did not allow it to trade back above it. So here's the 61 node. Do we do the same thing on the 61 node? Here are the single prints, by the way. Okay, single prints are filled in. So same thing we said earlier. Was this just a single print fill in? Are they going to go back up now? Or was this actual sell pressure? So you're watching for two things here. Do they allow it to trade back above 61? And do they allow it to trade below 55 to 57? Where was the low there? 56.50? So right now our high is 60.75. Now they're trading back above 61. They are allowing them to reclaim that node, so it's not overly bearish. So far, it looks like it was just a single print fill in. We'll see if they can rebound back to 61. If they do, they need to protect it buy-wise. And that's that magnet effect when you have like a big node outside the value area and then you have a bunch of smaller nodes. You kind of lose the smaller node and go back to the major node. You think about it as like the POC of the break, right? The developing POC of the break of balance, which I was showing you guys on stream. I think it was last week. I can start doing that again just to show you what I mean here. Like that's the developing POC of the break of balance, right? You could also use like an anchored VWAP technique. So if you want to pull an anchored VWAP from where you started to break balance, you could use that as well. And just think about that as like it's kind of like the magnet, right? That's like the line in the sand where the break of balance needs to hold. So right now those two levels are 56, 50, and 61. Okay, so the sellers originally were very strong here. We saw that reaction on that 67.50 node. So when the tape gets there, you have to see, do they even allow it to trade above that node? And I know this seems like a lot of like exhausting analysis, but you kind of get used to it. Like this is not something you're going to be doing like 24/7. It's just really when you're watching the trend and you're seeing if you should hold on to your trails or something like that. So far, they have not allowed it to trade back above that 750. Okay, here's the attempt here. Let's see how long they let them stay above this node here. Big bullish blocks, massive bullish blocks on NASDAQ. 1,300 contracts at 345. Bullish blocks of that size at high of day are a little bit scary. You typically don't want to see really large blocks like that on high of day or low of day because they could be grabbing liquidity. So those are a bit more dangerous. Well, that's kind of my point about front running levels. Is you typically want to front run major levels because if you think about retail traders, they always want to use these just kind of like easy levels, like high a day, low a day, whatever. Well, that's why you never want to think about stuff like that. Like, is it a buy trade? Is it a sell trade? Why are they buying? Are they hedging? Is it a possible opening position? Is it a closing? It's just too much shit you can't really. We cannot definitively say any of that stuff. So I don't think about any of that stuff. What I think about is it coming in bullish or bearish? Is it coming in above the bid, or sorry, above the ask or below the bid? And that's what the indicator tells you. The indicator tells you if it's coming in above the ask, which is green, or below the bid, which is red. And that's it. Everything else, you're basically just guessing. Unless you're like actually sitting there with all these sophisticated tools that will answer those questions for you, which most retail traders, 99.99% of traders do not have, I wouldn't even think about it. I never understand why a lot of traders get into those arguments for so long when neither one of those traders can really, they can't decisively say what the answer is. They're kind of just guessing. It's like the whole argument with like Delta and stuff. Like people make that argument with Delta as well. When people say like, oh, Delta is just market traders trading into limit traders, right? So does it actually mean anything? They are allowing them to stay above this node, but they're not allowing them to put in too much buy pressure. It's kind of glued to this level. Where's our next major level? It is actually right here, pretty much 380. Need a few more points. Our 321 target on NASDAQ has already been hit. Next target is 440. You could also target 404. 404 is a overnight high. I think I rounded it up here. So I said 380. 377 is the exact level. More block trades. Look at how big those are. They're almost the same exact size, too. 459, 458. Very likely the same trader. Good morning, Adam. Okay, now we've reclaimed all the major nodes. We actually turned that node at 67, kind of like 68, into the major node. So that is now the POC of the breakout. Actually, just barely is not the POC. It needs like one more pullback. And then it will be. So the dangerous thing about seeing block trades like this on high of day or low of day is they turn into sweeps a lot. So these like grab liquidity and then sweep back down. So what I talk about in my block trade video is paying attention to who is protecting those block trades. And right now these are being protected by the buyers, so it's not exactly a sweep just yet. We don't care if they're green or red or buyer or seller. We care about who's protecting them. Because everything else is what I was just talking about earlier. You don't know. You're just guessing. You don't know why they're doing what they're doing. For all we know, that could be somebody closing their bearish position. For all we know, that could be somebody hedging a massive position. Like, you just don't know. It's pointless to waste your brain power trying to figure it out. By the time you figure it out, you literally could have just looked at the chart and said, oh, okay, they're buying that level. Okay, got it. It keeps going back to that level and the buyers keep buying it. It's that simple. Yeah, Chris, no, you're spot on. That's what I was saying. Like, you want to keep an eye on it for a liquidity grab. And that's what I mean by like it's the opposing color. So the trade comes in green, which everyone's like, "Oh, it's a buy trade. Let me just press the buy button." But then it turns into a liquidity grab, and then it sweeps it, and all those people that just blindly followed the block trade are now getting completely swept. They're trapped. Which is why we always want to wait and see who's protecting those levels. So right now we can say the buyers are protecting them. And they haven't really been tested yet. But we are trading well above them, so we could say they're being protected. We could also say the smaller tape is or the large tape, which are smaller orders than these giant block trades, are also coming in bullish. No, it doesn't always add momentum, and that's the problem. People think it does, right? A lot of people think that because these block trades are coming in, that it's always going to do what it's doing now, where it's going in the favor of that block trade. I almost want this to just completely nuke, just so I can prove a point here and explain to you guys what I mean. A great example is what we saw earlier. We literally saw this earlier, actually. So we had this block trade here. It's the high of day 2, the tick. And then we dropped 50 points. So if you blindly followed this bullish block here, you just lost 50 points for no reason. Here's kind of an example of grabbing liquidity. So we have a big block come in, it goes up, and then it sweeps it. Okay, keep an eye on the single prints, possibly creating singles going up to, or sorry, going down to 67. Yeah, seeing those kind of blocks on high of day being that large, you need to see that immediate follow-up from the buyers. The buyers need to be protecting those immediately. And they kind of are, they kind of aren't. They pushed above them, but now they're stalling out. So this could be a weak high. You do not want to see a weak high after major block trades. They can be trapped very quickly. Keep an eye on high of day, or sorry, overnight high. And that's the overnight high of yesterday, not today. Basically the session high. Was a beautiful 1 minute pivot there. Tried to break the trail, then pivot instantly. Not too bad. Keep an eye on the 30-minute lows today. We haven't really lost a 30-minute low. You had one sweep, and then every other low has been massively protected. So we had like, what, 4 or 5 rotations. We had one pretty significant break of balance, ended up failing. That was that first. The one that looked like it was a really good break, and then it failed. And then we had one really good break of balance. And if we do the same thing here, if we go down, let's go down like a 1 minute. And I'll show you what I mean. So if we take this candle, this is like the break of balance candle, right? If we take a VWAP from there, and we take a developing POC, these are the levels that need to hold if you want to continue to break balance. And you lost that POC on the high there. You lost it at 49. Then you lost the VWAP at 48.50. And that break of balance quickly returned. Right. Do we have single prints? Single prints going down to 67. And then if we do the same thing on the break of the low side, we could grab it from here. And then we can grab an anchored VWAP as well. And then same thing, quickly reclaimed it. So within like what, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, reclaimed it? So if you struggle with visualizing that on the volume profile, you can use those little tricks there, and that will help. You can use an anchored VWAP or use a developing POC from the breakout point. When you start breaking the value high, start breaking the value low. Filling in single prints here. This is our untested level. So our level that we talked about earlier. The yeah, there it is. 72. That's the untested initial balance high. But all right, guys, we're streaming way too late today. I'm going to call it here. Appreciate you guys being here as always. I will be streaming in Discord for the rest of the day. Be on the lookout for those break of balance levels, the VWAP, the POC. That POC is very close to shifting to 68. And then the VWAP is around 58 for the break of balance. Once those levels are lost or you lose a couple of major nodes, you might go back to rotation. Now, at this point, back to rotation would be pretty much retracing the entire day. So that would go back down to like 25, which is probably not going to happen. I could see it trying to go back to rotation and then like kind of hanging out around the value high, maybe back around 50. I could see something like that happening. But right now, we're just protecting all the 30-minute lows. We have not really lost a 30-minute low today. You had one little break and then swept. So one time framing bullishly. So keep an eye on the trails. Keep an eye on the EMAs. Keep an eye on the VWAPs. Our next levels to the upside are the high of day or the overnight highs of yesterday. And then from there, just watch the trade plan. But all right, guys, if you want to support the channel, you can use code BREW on Apex, 80% off. If you need access to the OTS or Momo indicators with our partnership with Apex, just send me an email. Just send me the most recent receipt and let me know what your TradingView name is, and I'll get you added to those indicators. If you guys want to support the channel, you can hit that like button, subscribe. I will see you guys tomorrow, same time as always. If you want a free trial and Addis, it's down below, and Discord links to our website down below as well. But all right, guys, I appreciate you all being here. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace, everybody.